reading. The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. Jesus said to his disciples, "There was a rich man, and he had a steward who was denounced to him for being wasteful with his property. He called for the man and said, 'What is this I hear about you? Draw me up an account of your stewardship, because you are not to be my steward any longer.' Then the steward said to himself, 'Now that my master is taking the stewardship from me, what am I to do? Dig? Am I not strong enough? Go begging? I should be too ashamed. I know what I will do to make sure that when I am dismissed from office, there will be some to welcome me into their homes.' Then he called his master's debtors one by one. To the first he said, 'How much do you owe my master?' 100 measures of oil,' was the reply. The steward said, 'Here, take your bond. Sit down straight, away and write 50. To another he said, 'And you, sir, how much do you owe?' 100 measures of wheat,' was the reply. The steward said, 'Here, take your bond and write 80. The master praised the dishonest steward for his astuteness. For the children of this world are more astute in dealing with their own kind than are the children of light. And so I tell you this, use money, tainted as it is, to win your friends, and thus make sure that when it fails you, they will welcome you into the tents of eternity. The man who can be trusted in little things can be trusted in great. The man who is dishonest in little things will be dishonest in great. If then you cannot be trusted with money, that tainted thing, who will trust you with genuine riches? And if you cannot be trusted with what is not yours, who will give you what is your very own? No servant can be the slave of two masters. He will either hate the first and love the second, or treat the first with respect and the second with scorn. You cannot be the slave both of God and of money. The Gospel of the Lord.
My brothers and sisters, in the first reading today, Amos chides those who exploit the poor, and he follows in the tradition of all the prophets, speaking to the people of how close to God's heart are those who are poor. And in the gospel, Jesus puts a choice between us. He says, you cannot serve God and money. You must make the choice. When Pope Francis was asked to choose a name after the conclave, he chose the name Francis. And he chose that name on purpose because St. Francis of Assisi was the poor man of Assisi who identified himself with the materially poor of his time. And ever since then, if you read the homilies or the statements of Pope Francis, he is reminding the Church that we have made a preferential option for the poor, and that we need to enter into that tradition of the prophets of the Old Testament and of Jesus in reaching out and making a preferential option for the poor. There was a person, a theologian, I think, in Latin America who coined this phrase: nobody gets to heaven without a reference letter from the poor. And this wonderfully captures something that the prophets underlined centuries ago. The prophets of Israel had coined this mantra: the quality of your faith will be judged by the quality of justice in your land. And the quality of justice in your land will be judged by how widows and orphans and strangers are faring while you are still alive. That phrase, widows, orphans, and strangers, was a code for the weakest and the most vulnerable groups in our society, in the society of that time. For the great prophets, the great prophets said, we will ultimately be judged religiously and morally on the basis of how the poorest of the poor fared while we were still alive. Jesus says in the gospel today, make a choice between mammon, money, or God. And each of us has to make that choice. If we look into the gospel, we see Jesus following in that great tradition of the prophets.